Hi, I'm Reza Grant, National Beach Volleyball player, and you're watching Scoreboard on ACTN.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACTN. It's always a pleasure every Tuesday evening when we come into your home and we talk sports. On tonight's program, we're going to be talking secondary schools football. As you know, recently the Ministry of Sports has indicated a return to play policy, and we are hoping that that will include the secondary schools football. It's been 2 years we have not been able to see any sort of football from these youngsters. A lot of them have lost the opportunity to, showcase their talent, maybe to get scholarships. But we're going to hear a bit more about what is happening with the secondary schools football. My guest tonight is the newly installed President, Merere Gonzales. Merere, it's a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matheson, for having me.
You won the election on the 15th of April 2021.
Yes.
In the midst of the pandemic, where no sports or nothing was taking place. Let's go back a bit briefly to when you were selected. What has happened since then to now?
Well, as the newly elected president, with the executive around the table, we put plans in place with the expectation to have a season of September 2021. That was the idealistic approach. But realistically, when we had another spike or increase in the positive cases and death, the ministries, and more in particular the Ministry of Health, affecting the decision by the Ministry of Education, we had to put a hold on it because we were expected to have actually an increase of student population come September of 2021, but that did not materialize. We also had planned to have a truncated season, which would have commenced in the middle of October. And again, because of the present scenario at that time, it affected the student population turnout, and that was affected. In the interim period, another plan being proposed by one of our major sponsors was to have another truncated season come December, lapping over into January, February of 2022, of which we would have focused primarily on the boys' Premier Division and as the league and also facilitate and accommodate the intercal with the possibility of having the girls and boys championship. Now, I need to make this categorically clear too, and this is something on the front burner, especially with FIFA promoting very aggressively women's football. We at the SSFL also are facilitating for the continued advancement and development of girls football. We were expected to embark on the historic and inaugural Premier Division girls competition for 2020. And unfortunately, what took place did materialize because of the pandemic. And then 2 years, as you quite rightly said. So we are still very much having strong thoughts with the expectation to plan for that, the commencement of that particular category come September of 2022. So that we will both have the Premier Division boys and girls. Now, one would have said, therefore, if you all were unable to go onto the field of play and have football, what were you doing as a responsible and professional organization in the dormant period, where all sports, inclusive of football, was affected? And while I totally agree with you and the rest of persons who think similarly that there are some casualties that we had, unfortunately and regrettably to say that, where some students who were literally in Form 5 and Form 6 expecting to use the football platform, the SSFL League, as a gauge, a stepping stone, a benchmark, so that they could have used that also to add to their resume for those who were sourcing football scholarship either locally at the UTT or internationally at universities and colleges abroad. So some persons were affected because of that. Others, on the other hand, we were able to provide from the Ministry of Education and also from the Secondary School Football League's office letters that would have substantiated and supported the level of performance of these footballers while they were maybe playing in the under 14 or the under 16.
Yeah.
And even though some of them may have been very well playing for the Premier Division, even though they would have been in Form 4.
Yeah.
And it did work out quite well for them, and they did successfully attain some scholarships along the way. Having said that, we embarked on a few online activities, by virtual means, and one of them at this present moment, as a matter of fact, last week Friday, the 28th of January, was the deadline to submit the video clips for the ball juggling challenge showdown competition. On the 14th of January would have been the deadline for the submission of the registration forms. Now, because it was in such demand, the two deadlines were in December of 2021. So we extended it to facilitate a few more students who were desirous and were not able to submit as yet. At this point in time, the video clips are being collated. The judges at hand who will be viewing them, assessing them, and assisting the SSFL with arriving at the winners. Persons such as Mr. Jefferson George, who's the chairman of the Judges Committee, and you know Jefferson being a former national youth player and also a national goalkeeping coach, and also now interim president of the Coaches Association of Trinidad and Tobago. He has with him some renowned figures in the person of former strike squad captain Clayton Morris. We also have with them Mr. Mark and Hislop, former beach soccer player and former youth player and scholarship winner from Tobago. Karen Forbes, the present captain of the female Soca Warriors team. She's also one of them from Tobago too. And Maylie Atten Johnson, one of the renowned, popular and talented footballers who is now in America plying a trade. So those are the 5 judges who will be viewing the video clips and giving us the necessary guidance at this time. But with further discussion with the officers and the executive, our plan, and certainly inclusive of the General Council, our plan is to have some additional online activities, especially in the off-season, but also with the expectation to, this is something we have been deliberating strongly on, but we are seeing where it will most likely come to fruition, bearing in mind all that is happening. In the off-season now, we are looking towards having a pilot project, a futsal competition, even if it's just a run for maybe 2 weekends, one to facilitate the males and one to facilitate the females. In addition now to having a secondary school football league progressive football workshop webinar, and that will run for about maybe 6 weeks of 1 session per week, dealing with specific football-related topics such as coaching education, prevention and care of injuries, health and performance, the latest amendment to the laws of the game, nutrition and performance, and also the pathway to careers, read those who are interested in seeking scholarships or pursuing.
I think that is a brilliant idea, because whatever sport you are in, I think you must be fully educated, you know, about the sports. And I always say, after sports, there's a life ahead of you.
Yes, definitely.
So it's better to take them at school age, right? Rather than when they leave school and they go into a club, then for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, because at school age, that is where you start to determine what line of work or,
Yes,
or what
the
you want
career,
to do,
the profession, yes.
career profession that you want to adhere to. So I must compliment you all on that.
Yes.
And also, I think it's good that during the off season, you don't just let the sportsmen, yes, you want to give them their time to either go to their family or go with it, but you want to keep them, if you're a footballer, we want to keep your mind on
Yes.
football. So having things, as what you talk about during the off season, I think it's a brilliant idea.
I think as you mentioned that, Mr. Matheson, also too, we would most likely be seriously pursuing another online activity, which is ball mastery. That is being able to utilize the ball on the ground, etc., like that. The dribbling skill of the player, which is another very captivating, innovative, and entertaining segment. Now, quite interestingly, is that while we are doing this online, and we have expectation to do some more activities, the expectation also is to have it physically live on the field of play, as long as we get the permission to do so.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, in our interaction with some of our sponsors, they are very eager to come on board and support the need for it when we go onto the field of play. Not that they wouldn't support it online. They are going to support it online, but they're also encouraging us to have it physically on the field of play in moving forward for 2022. In this COVID-19 pandemic, we have had, and God forbid, some of our members losing loved ones, all right, succumbing to the deadly virus. And with all due respect, we have to also acknowledge one of our MVPs of 2018, Mr. Mark Ramdeen, lost both of his parents last year, in the middle of last year. The SSFL provided the necessary support along the way, because not only was he a normal player, but he was the MVP, and also, as you know, he present national player of the futsal national team that played in Costa Rica. So we are trying as much as possible to provide all the necessary guidelines, directives, to encourage our membership, the student population, to be safe and to live a very healthy life, and to remain focused on the game that they love the most, which is football, as we continue to guide them along the pathway of their success.
Well, I must say, I must really, I'm taken back here by, you know, what you have done so far.
Thank you.
You know, under the conditions, because I think that, you know, I think we have lost a lot of young sportsmen and women, you know, who have gone by the wayside, because, you know, some of the organization didn't put anything in place, maybe in the earlies until late. So there wasn't anything there for the sportsmen or women, the young ones, to keep them, you know, grounded, right? And, you know.
But you know, interestingly, Mr. Matheson, now that you're mentioning that, when Angasif, the present head coach of the Soca Warriors national team, who is also the coach of the under-20, when they called the screening session quite recently, a few weeks ago, prior to Christmas of 2021, right, lapping over into January of this year, there were about 299 young under-20 male footballers. So it shows you that they are there. They are there, and they are eager, and they are hungry and thirsting to get back into the game of football. And most of them would be most likely players who are presently students of the SSFL school system.
Okay. Well, we need to take a break. When we come back, we want to chat a bit on what lies ahead, because now that the return to play has been there for us now, let's see what we have in store for secondary schools football.
Certainly.
Viewers, I'm speaking with the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Secondary Schools Football League, Mr. Merere Gonzales. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back, viewers, to Scoreboard at ACTN. Mr. President, I was quite impressed with your whole, plans and all what has transpired after your election, victory and up to now. But now we have the return to play, as I mentioned earlier. What plans have you all put in place leading up? Because the league normally opens in September.
That's correct.
So you have a couple months, right? Leading up to September, what is your plans?
Well, first and foremost, as the president, I have to say that I'm very heartened and very happy of the fact that this has been released by the Minister of Sport to have a resumption of competition or the engaging of physical activity and more so football, being a contact sport, which could be easily transmitted. However, we have had over the last few months, even with meeting with the very same Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, we have our program well documented with the proposals and suggestions, and it is just now to allow it to get the opportunity to come into fruition. So it's there for us to use. With this announcement being made by the Minister of Sport, it affords us the opportunity now to even more systematically and strategically put things in place. Not that we didn't have it in place, but to even bring it now into concrete and tangible format. And that is with the continuation of this from January into February and the off-season, is to have a ball mastery competition, online competition that is. We want to also embark on having the futsal competition as a pilot project. The expectation is also most likely, or within the next year or two, to now extend it into the various age groups.
Right.
But we will maybe use the Premier Division and the Championship Girls Division, or even the very Premiership Division Girls that we want to embark on in September 2022 to go into the girls, to go into the futsal competition. Now, we are also considering involving the SSFL student population in a beach soccer competition as a pilot project. So we are spreading our wings, figuratively, to give the opportunity for our student athletes who will be skilled not only on the 11er side, but they could very well find themselves representing the country in futsal or in beach soccer, as in the case of Mark Ramdeen.
Yes.
And one of our main objectives in the policies that we have under the SSFL is to have a holistic approach to the education of the student population. So that affords us that opportunity to give them that. Now also too, we want to look at the possibility of having a very productive, meaningful, positive, progressive football webinar, of which we'll have various very, very pertinent football, correlated football activities that will be very valuable and meaningful to the student population. And for example, one of them is the coaching education, the players' development, mental health issue, especially at this point in time, with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we have to navigate ourselves in a very, very, very tactful way, but yet still understand that while adults have major issue and the stresses in the society of the COVID-19 pandemic, we could just imagine what could happen and what is happening to the lives of those younger ones who has taken them literally by surprise. It's the first of its kind. They have never been home for such a long time. The online experience is something new for them. So we want to give them that opportunity of realizing that there are more options available for them where they could stay involved in the game, and when we are able to resume to the field of play, return of play, then it will just be a smooth, or should I say, it will be a continuation of what we left out, hoping that it will be a smooth transition.
Right. So from where you sit, you were saying basically that all your plans are in place for normal opening.
Oh, yes. it
Resumption
is.
of play
Yeah.
in September.
Yes, yes.
Right.
We just, along that way, there are some other possible sponsors that we are having discussion with additional meetings. And we are exceptionally and grateful and thankful for those who are presently on board with us, not only as sponsors, but as partners.
Yes.
Because we look at it differently in the sense that if you're a sponsor, then you will be here for a moment, a period of time. But a
Yes.
partner now
Yeah, long term.
buys into your plan and your dreams, and they stay with you, and we are very happy for that. And we are hoping with further discussion, persons and companies and entities are seeing the need to be part of the youth development football in the country, and SSFL is one of the very critical and important agencies that could afford the further development of youth football in the country through its competition.
Okay. Now, what are the protocols that, if you'd be able to tell us, that some of these games are played in school grounds?
Yeah.
Right? How are you all going to be mindful to make sure that all the necessary protocols are enforced?
Very good question. Very good question. Before we were even given the announcement by the Minister of Sport to resume, we were deliberating on the fact of having a more condensed, truncated season. And with the truncated season, we would have had a more limited area to play in, for example, rather than to facilitate the school grounds and the stadium. We'd have had games only, for example, in Atobolan Stadium and maybe Easy Crawford Stadium.
Right.
So therefore, two venues and maybe Mani Ramjan.
Yeah.
So you now manage 3 venues.
Yes.
So based on whatever necessary leeway we are given from the Ministry of Sport, working closely and harmoniously in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education, if perchance we are able to facilitate and accommodate school grounds or recreation ground, then we'll be very selective about the ones that we choose, because we'll still have to ensure that all the necessary health and safety protocols
that is what
are very much in place. Because what we don't want, Mr. Matteson, is for some untoward incident to occur and then the SSFL name and status be tarnished.
Yes.
So we will continue to monitor this situation very carefully, and we will cautiously re-enter into the football scenario, because as you quite rightly know, and that is one of the other factors that would have been a deterrent factor, or not a deterrent factor, but should I say a very important factor, is that we didn't want to rush last year into having a truncated season without having a substantial time given for the preparation of the teams. As you know, any coach of quality will need at least maybe a month to 6 weeks to prepare their footballers, their players. Now, we could afford to maybe prepare them in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. But what you will have now is a watered down, inverted commas, or the quality of the football wouldn't be of the level that we are accustomed to. So we took that into consideration and said, because of the time strain, the time constraint, that it is better that we ensure that the quality of the football is not compromised, and also don't bring any unnecessary injuries to players, forcing them into a season.
But you know, I sat here when you were talking about the selective venues for the football, like the Easy Crawford at Atobolan. I know my mind around me, the school's ground mightn't be all that bad, you know. Because remember, the children has to be tested before they go to school.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So they are already in an environment where they are tested.
Right.
Right? So you're bringing, you're playing in school A ground,
Yes.
and you're bringing school B, which was all, so in a You understand? So maybe the school ground might be the selected school ground might be the ideal place.
Yes.
Once they ground, they have the grounds and it's in good condition for football.
And again, I'm glad you mentioned that because the members of the General Council are basically the representative of the respective schools in the Premiership Division and Championship Division.
Right.
So with the information that they are sharing with us, the principals who sometimes attend these meetings, they being the very significant figures that they are, will give us the necessary information that we need to ensure is it possible that a particular school venue can be used and how much of it can be used.
Yes.
They will be in a better position, as I said, to guide us along the way, knowing fully well that we just have to move very meticulously to ensure that when we embark on it, that all areas are covered and no stone is left unturned.
I know we just have about 2 minutes remaining before we end the program. Is there any message that you would like to take the opportunity to send out to the public now pertaining to the secondary schools football?
Yes, certainly. I want to ensure the public that the Secondary School Football League understands its role and its contribution. It's since 1964 we have been part of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm the 13th president.
Okay.
Yes. And so we understand the role that we have to play. Sometimes we have to make decisions that may not be in total agreement by all, but we do it with the understanding that the student athletes are our first priority. And their goals, their dreams, and their aspirations are the ones that we will certainly continue to support. So we look forward for the continued support of the school, the administrative staff led by their principals, the various alumni, the PTAs, the Parent Teachers Association, and the major sponsors on board with us, and the football fraternity of Trinidad and Tobago, that we will endeavor to continue to do all that is necessary to create the platform to get the footballers back onto the field of play so that their dreams, their hopes, and their aspirations can be achieved, especially those who wish to carry their footballing career at a higher level in the case of attaining sporting scholarships, local or abroad, or those who maybe wish to go into professional contracts.
Well, I would like to personally thank you for the short notice too, and coming and enlightening us with what is happening with the secondary schools football. We want to congratulate you on a job thus far, and we look forward to chatting with you again.
Oh, certainly a pleasure.
Well, viewers, we have come to the end of another edition of Scoreboard on ACTN. If you missed any part of the program, there's a repeat tomorrow at 12 and also one on Saturday at 1 p.m. And I will be talking to the members of the Secondary Schools League as we go along to enlighten you as what is taking place. Before I leave you today, I just want to give you a brief piece of history. Do you know that on this day in 1914, the Chicago White Sox and the New York Giants played a baseball game in Egypt to promote the sport, and that game ended in a tie 3-3. So, see you next week. Be blessed and be safe most of all.
Thank you.